hesitate. Ha! Hence my predicament. Drink until I'm sick of it, but still making a niche of it. Played like an instrument, but trying to keep my distance. Within an inch of quitting to something with ass and hips enters. Then I'm back on my nigga shit. And she love every inch of it. Small problems turn to some big shit. You trading your heart and quarter for that naughty boy. I think the devil's waiting on me in there. Cause I swear to God, I think I've been here. Where is my soul? I've lost control. Guess I just have a drink since I'm up in there. I need that. Naughty water, naughty water, naughty water. I need that. Naughty water, yeah. Naughty water, naughty water, naughty water. Oh shit. What time is it? Fuck. 10, 9, 4, 5, 6. I swim good, sea full of chicks, pops. Taught well, learned how to fish, but I never been good with this. I am the lonely homie, mind the case slowly as I sit in the dark room. Loud tunes control me like fuck Mary, fuck full, fuck jazz, fuck any girl that ain't had a nerve to call back. All these chicks in my history turn around and do the same shit to me. I ain't gonna let this shit get to me. Contemplated had an epiphany, became clear to me so instantly. Shouldn't even begin with me. My father got fucked my mama so many damn times, this shit passed down to me. But damn, I still bought you these flowers though. Nah, I still ain't learned my lesson, bro. Silly ace, why you always trust these hoes? Maybe once I have this drink, I'll know. The devil's waiting on me in there. Cause I swear to God, I think I've been here. Where is my soul? I lost control. Guess I just have a drink since I'm up in there. I need that. Naughty water, naughty water, naughty water, naughty water. I need that. Naughty water, yeah. Naughty water, 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 naughty water. SiHK BROTHERS. You hear this beat and wonder why you feel so bad. Don't blame me, put it on my notepad. I did a number 2 to make me number 1. A little lamp light, heat seeping from a wood like a camp light. I'm the ghost story, been gone in the mind. You the marshmallow, so toast for me. Now take it to the head, running this shit just from laying in the bed thinking they just don't got it like me. They just don't got it like me. They just don't got it like me. I'm a mother rapping problem, so take no slow sneak up. They just don't got it like me. They just don't got it like me. They just don't got it like me. I'm a mother rapping problem, so take no slow sneak up. I'm a killer and your career is on the chopping block. All day he go cocking glocks, shooting shots. Now I'm just dribbling, pastime, scribbling up pastime. So long I remember being colder than a member of the Winter Olympics. Been gifted since special and gifted at Tyler Street over in Oak Cliff. Now I'm the game of suits, competition ain't stiff. 2 of the sickest acting wordsmith, get 'em.
I'm a problem, try to solve them. You go insane trying to understand his brain power. Sophisticated cranium science can't even label them. They underestimated him out of this world, these aliens, so be afraid of them. You can't hang with them. Smith swallow niggas like multivitamins. Try to compete but you'll never succeed. Soon they all see they don't got it like me. Cause you know
they just don't got it like me. They just don't got it like me.
Yeah.
They just don't got it like me. I'm a mother rap.
Yo, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy, Ace Boogie, artist, plant eater, truth speaker. I'm a graphic designer, photographer, actor. I do a lot of things, so it's easier to just call me Ace of all trades, the modern Renaissance man. I'm super, super excited about being here today on the very first Sunday where we are launching Dissecting Religion. If you follow my content, if you've been supporting my channel from before, you've seen that I was doing I was doing videos dissecting religion on my YouTube channel. But I decided to switch up the format because it was taking me too long to edit the video. So I just wanted to get out the content. So following my wife's footsteps, I'm going live on a weekly basis. You know, her day is going to be Saturdays at 1 p.m. And you can check her stuff out on One Great Vegan. And mine will be on Sundays at 1 p.m. And we'll get a little bit spiritual and be able to really hone in on what it all means, man, what this all really means. What the hell are we doing here, yo? It's a big question. You know, what are we doing here, and how are we supposed to do it? And you know, I've been really, really blessed in the last couple of years to finally understand the stories that we've been arguing and fighting about for so long. I was raised a Seventh-day Adventist Christian, and you know, my father is extremely devout in his denomination, and he really instilled that in us as at a young age, you know, to go to church on Saturdays and really understand the Old Testament and follow it to a T, you know, never straying from the rules in the Old Testament. And then my father met my mother, who is you know, she wasn't really on the same wave of wanting to be, you know, tied down and defined by her religion. um and and when they got divorced, you know, I got to live in two different households where I saw, because the deal was my parents would have us for 2 weeks at a time. Me and my sister would be at my dad's house from the 1st to the 15th of the month, and we'd be at my mom's house from the 15th to the end of the month. And that's just how it went for 10 years after my parents got divorced. And it really, really shaped my understanding of life, because I had this balance, right? Like at a, I was at a, uh, I was in a very conservative household, and from the 1st to the 15th of the month. And then I was in a very liberating household where my mom, you know, as long as we were respectful and good, and we had a clear focus, we had a clear aim, and we were being respectful. She didn't really mind what we were doing. But when we at our dad's house, it got to be, you know, be like there's no TV on Friday nights. You know, no, we're not eating any pork. No, no going out. We're not really partaking in the world in the same way. There were a lot of school dances that I ended up missing just because you know, they would fall. If they fell in the first half of the month, then my dad wouldn't let me go. If it was a Friday night, like it was just a no. I could be sure that wasn't going to happen. And so when I turned 18, like I really believed hardcore in Christianity. I was really tied to my faith. I had gotten baptized. I was preaching. I was trying to be as good and as straight edge as I could be. I wasn't smoking. I wasn't drinking, despite the fact that my friends were. I wasn't having sex. And I was like really clinging to my religion, because I knew that I was going to be going to college. And in college, like, you know, there is no rules. Like, no, I don't have a dad to be like, don't do this, don't do that. You know, it's really just me, and guided by my faith. So I really clung to my faith. And then just before I went to college, that summer before, I watched this video
that changed my whole understanding of religion, and I felt like it was all a hoax. The video I watched, I'm not gonna name it because I, I see now a lot of problems with the video, but it was enough to force me to rethink my understanding of my religion, and maybe my religion isn't the only religion and isn't the right one and isn't correct and isn't real, and so I was done with it. Like but at the same time I couldn't be done with it because I was going into college and I didn't want to be ruined by college because I didn't have my faith anymore, you know. So I made it. So now I'm at college and I meet this girl who is on the complete opposite track of me. She is just finding her faith, and she just got saved. She didn't go to church all her life like I did, and but she was gorgeous, and I fell in love with her. I thought that me meeting her was a sign that I needed to really cling to my faith. Like, despite the fact that I had seen this video, that I started to question a lot of the plot holes in it. I was like, oh, maybe this is God trying to tell me, you know, to stay, you know, and to stay on the straight and narrow and still believe. But I didn't believe, right? Like I didn't really see it at all. Like I didn't understand. I was complete, like my faith was completely shaken, and it was like this is all bullshit, to be quite frank. And but this girl was like so in it, and so for me to be with her, I had to be in it, and I had to see it, and so it forced me to wrestle with the idea of God and the idea of religion and the idea of Christianity and what it all actually means. And this is in 2009, right? So from 09 to 2011 or 2012, I'm wrestling with this idea of my faith with a girl, but I guess by really trying to form a relationship with this woman, you know, because a lot of things. So I didn't have sex. I didn't lose my virginity until I was 21. So I held my virginity for her, like wanting to be with her. I wanted to make it work with her. And so for the first 3 years of college, I was very adamant about not partaking in drugs, alcohol, any of the sort, no sex, and to the point where I was actually, you know, very critical and judgmental of other people in college in my first couple of years. And then and luckily, you know, it was a tumultuous relationship. We were on and off again. We were together, not together. It was working out, then it wasn't. It was like, it was terrible in a lot of ways. But it was great in the fact that it kept me on the straight and narrow. It kept me from partaking in the forbidden fruit. And we'll talk about what exactly that means as we go through, as we start to dissect the religion. So being in that relationship, I was like in this confines. It was like the worst. it was it was just like being at my dad's house, so under wraps, and like I wasn't free and I wasn't liberated because I was with this girl who, like, I wanted things to work out, but she was so tied to this faith that like she wouldn't do certain things, like she wouldn't partake in the world in certain ways. But then I saw it was hypocritical because she would partake in the world in other ways, and so it felt very tumultuous, and that's exactly how the relationship came to be. And so being on that journey was like, oh, now I'm with this woman, and I'm with the girl who I think I want to be with for the rest of my life. Like, I want to make it work. I want to commit to her. But it's like I feel like I'm under, I'm under lock and key, like with my dad, being at my dad's house. I couldn't do nothing, yo. It was terrible. We couldn't go out. My friends, my boy Ant is on the live right now. Tattoo Tone, he could definitely attest to it. Being out in the acreage. My dad used to live in the boondocks. We couldn't do shit, man. We couldn't do anything at his house. And it was like it was actually part of it was a thing. It was a joke all the time, and it sucked too because I had to like get friends to drive me home. But like nobody would want to drive me home because they would want like $20 worth of gas money, and I didn't have $20 to just be giving people to drive me all the way home. So I would just stay at the school and hope people would want to hang out at the school. But anyway, so fast forward to college, I'm in this situation and it's like, damn, I'm under lock and key and whatever. And fortunately, she was a year older than me. So she graduated a year before me. So by the time she graduated and she was gone and she wasn't the center of my attention. Now I was like, oh, I'm single. I'm free. I could do whatever I want. And so I used that time to enjoy my senior year. I had friends who were like, "We're gonna help you lose your virginity," like, like they were so clutch, and I ended up meeting another girl who I ended up falling in love with. I've fallen in love so many times, and now we could talk about that. We'll definitely be talking about that on this on dissecting religion, but we finally I was finally liberated again, and I got to partake in the world. I drank for the first time when I was 21, and what that taught me was that like the abstinence, abstaining from partaking in illegal activities until you're of age is important because it allows you to integrate those aspects of life when you're actually mature enough to do so. If you start to incorporate things like smoking and drinking and having sex too early, you're not a fully formed human being, right? So you can't really properly surmount all of those activities and integrate them properly into your life, right? It's gonna end up in mayhem, and it's gonna lead you in a wrong direction, and we'll talk about what that means too. It's gonna cause you to sin, and sin is a very, very interesting concept, which I'll explain here in a bit. But being on this path where I've had a key purpose, a key reason for abstaining. I've had a goal, a noble goal that has kept me on, like it's kept me as a man of principle, right? And it's really important to have a principle that is orienting you towards the future. And that's all going to make sense in just a second. But I want to really finish honing in on why I circled back to religion and why I found myself back in understanding what it means in a way that people don't talk about anymore, which is really unfortunate, right? There's been a lot of information lost in translation, and I hope to rectify that over the course of these segments, where we get to really hone in on what it all actually means. Oops, what the heck? Yeah, so I really want to hone in on what it all actually means. So being when once I started to experience the world and partake in the world, it started to make sense. Like, it wasn't that having sex was wrong, or being, or drinking was wrong, and not in some global sense, right? It was the wrong time for me to do it. And that is so important to understand when things should happen, right? So there's a saying, the intelligent man knows what to say and how to say it, but the wise man knows when. That's the difference between knowledge and wisdom, right? You can know things, you can know a lot about a lot of stuff, but if you don't know how to properly integrate it into your life, then it's going to do you disservice all the time, no matter how you look at it, no matter how you try to dissect it, right? You have to know, you have to understand when. Why is that? Why do you have to understand when? Because it's the only thing that you don't control. Time is the only thing that you do not control, but it's the thing that everyone has to agree on for us to move towards the future, right? Because the future is pulling us. The future is always pulling us towards it. Light is in the future, right? Everything about your destiny is tomorrow. It's coming, and you come from darkness, right? Everything behind you is dark, everything ahead of you is light. And that's pulling you towards it. The future is pulling you towards it. And as it pulls you, right? Because you can't control it. It's like you're playing Guitar Hero, right? Those little notches are coming, right? Those notches are making their way, and you got to know when to press the button. It doesn't matter if you know how to press the button. It doesn't matter that you know what button to press, right? What really matters is when you press it. So that's the way you have to think about your life. You're always oriented towards something, and you want to be oriented towards the future, right? Okay, why is that? So it's because you exist in a story, right? Life is a story. And I'll explain that, because a story is how you started, right? Point A, where you're going, point B, and then you tell how you got there, right? How did you get from point A to point B? That's your story. And presumably, if you want to make it to heaven, then you have to set heaven as your destination. And heaven is whatever you want it to be, right? Like you say, it's streets of gold, and it just means you want for nothing. Heaven is a place where you want for the least amount of things, right? You don't have to want anything because it's already there. You already have it. Yeah. So you're existing in this story that is pulling you towards a future that you want to be heaven, right? So it has to be forward. It has to be better than here. Wherever you are, it has to be better than here. And then you tell the story of your life, which is the line in between. And I should draw this out. I'll draw it out next time for you guys and have it ready. I'll pull up a presentation. But so you start at a point A, which is where you are right now. Yeah. And then you got somewhere, you were heading somewhere. That's your point B, that's your destination. And then you tell the story of how you got there. How did that all take place? Yeah. And that's literally what everything means. That's what all life is about, right? Moving towards that destination. When you read a story, you want to know how the characters got to where they got, right? That's why you're reading it. They're one way now, and then throughout the process there was a transformation that happened, right? So by the time you get to point B, the characters in the story are no longer the characters they were at point A, and that's your life, right? So your life is pulling you towards a future that you create, and we'll talk about exactly how you create that by diving in to the first chapter of Genesis. I'm super excited because I really want to take it line by line, because there's a lot of information here. Now, why am I using Genesis? Why am I going to Christianity? Well, I believe that there's there's got to be a reason why we are still fighting over this book. There's got to be a reason. We still talk about this book now, right? This was written thousands of years ago. Thousands of years ago, and the stories tens of thousands of years before that, right? The oral traditions, because it was oral traditions well before it became a book, right? And so I looking at my own life, the fact that I feel like I had every reason to deny what was in here, right? I've learned, I've lived, I've gone, I've seen, and I had every reason to deny what was in here. And I see why people are denying it, and I agree with them. I'm like, okay, that makes sense, that makes sense, that makes sense. And then, yet and still, these stories somehow seem relevant. Somehow, we're still talking about this shit, yo. And I don't understand. I didn't understand why. So I had to really think about it. I had to really, really think about it. And then I started to think about, you know, people think that we're all one. There's a belief that, you know, we are all one, we're all united, we're all one group, one, you know, we're all one God, and we all make up the same thing. And I believe that to be true, because if you treat people like they're not that, like they don't have a spark of divinity within them, they get really frustrated at you, right? Treat people like they are slaves and they will revolt. Yeah, you can't. It just doesn't work. We can't be slaves. We're not that. We're connected. We all seem to have this inner voice within us that tells us where to go and tells us what to do and tells us how to be and tells us when things are right and tells us when things are wrong. Like, we have this inner sense in our gut, and it's like nobody is not an imposition of external morality. No one is telling us that, you know, that we should, that this is right. Like, it's just, it feels in our bones. No, this isn't right. That was wrong. No. And when you watch a story, you're not confused about who the good guy is versus who the bad guy is. You know, you're watching the story like, oh yeah, like that's the good guy. You know who the good guy is already, because it's in your bones. It's part of, you know what is true. You know a good story. You know when a story is fundamental, it speaks to you, right? I believe that this book was written by the one that we all say we are. We're all connected to the one, the spark of divinity within ourselves that pulls us towards the future, right? The consciousness, the inner guide. That's what an artist is, right? An artist is connected to that inner guide. They are connected to a source when they start to create. Where the fuck do the creations come from? When you think about artists, sometimes you're like, dang, yo, how the heck, how is this possible? How did he do that? You know, you see a good actor, a good performance, you're like, how? You see a great painting, you're like, how the hell? Because they were connected. They were connected to the inner guide, the inner voice, right? You want to understand how you're connected so that you can fully optimize your connection. That's how you win at life. So this book is written by everyone and no one. It's written by all of us, right? We've been writing this book for thousands of years. We've been telling these stories because the stories are still true. And it's not true in the sense that it's factual and historically accurate. It's true in the sense of great poetry, the way a good story is true. The way you can read, the reason why Harry Potter is true, the reason why Batman is true, because those stories, those are so honest. They're grounded in a reality, in a reality that we understand. And when the stories aren't true, they're not good. Right? They're not good. We don't like stories that lie. So there can't be any lies in here, man. We looking in here. This is poetry. We got to look at this shit like it's poetry. And so we're gonna dissect it like it's the best poetry ever written, because it's written by everyone. And when you have that collective, that hive mind, you think of it like Wikipedia. You know what I'm saying? You got to think of it like Wikipedia. Exactly. Wikipedia is a prime example of how it's a collective. It's a collective of hyperlinks, of hyper understanding. All of our understanding is put together this thing called Wikipedia, right? That has allowed us to and we all trust it, right? We all trust. We look at it, despite the fact that it changes like 1,000 times per millisecond or some shit. Like it's ever changing all the time, but we trust it because it's the hive mind. It's the collective consciousness that creates it. And that's who made this, the collective consciousness, because we understand every single story in this book. When you read it, people aren't confused, right? You might get lost in the poetry, right? But you're not confused because the story's like, oh, that's how life works. The way these stories work is how life actually works. And I'm gonna dive real deep into this. So let's start at the beginning. And I think it's like we got to start at the beginning. It's so cool because it's just I'm just so excited. So here we go. Chapter 1, Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Okay. Now I'm going to explain what that means. So if you understand that the fundamental elements of life is light and darkness, right? Chaos and order. That's the yin yang symbol. So if you can imagine the yin yang symbol, you have the dark paisley, which represents chaos, and it has a white dot in it. That's the order within it. And then you have the light paisley, which is the order, and then it has a bit of chaos within it. If you believe in, first of all, like you can't not believe this if you use technology. And all of you are on your phones right now watching, or you're on your devices, and the way that technology works is ones and zeros. And we figured it out as humans, right? We understand that to create something, to create even a fragment of intelligence, you have to use ones and zeros. You have to use chaos and order. Life is a balance of those two things. Yeah. And so what we have described here is that in the beginning, right, the earth was without form. There was no form. So there's just darkness, chaos, right? Nothing. There's nothing that exists. And we know this to be true. Like there was nothing before there was something. But then when the something here comes, it's like, just think about outer space, silence, nothing. And then something, boom, bang, whatever you want to call that. You want to call that the Big Bang? You want to call that a star exploding? You want to call that God speaking? That's light. Light bursts through, right? Because that's how it happens, right? You have nothing, and then you have something. And then those two things are forever conjoined, right? But then the question becomes, is something better than nothing? Right? is something better than nothing? I would say yes, something is better than nothing, right? So you have this understanding, like this is true, and we got to think about it as an oral. Think about it long way back in time, right? Think about like before humans were even thoughts, before humans were concepts, before life existed. Nothing. There was nothing. There was nothing, right? The earth was without form. Darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Now, if you understand life, the reason why we say this, if you understand life, life cannot exist without water, right? So God, which is us, which has got this spirit of life, has been proliferating for at least 3.5 billion years. And we know that it can't exist without water. But here we got these smart ass motherfuckers that know that the Spirit of God, life itself, exists within water. So you are a being of water. You can't survive without water. Why do you think you can survive longer on water than you can survive on food? Because food is energy. Water is H2O, oxygen, the breath of life. The Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. You understand what that means. You get that. You can't, there is no God without water. There is no life without water. There is nothing without water. Let's keep it going. Verse 3. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening and there was morning the first day. Y'all. And God said, why is that so powerful? Right now, these ancient people are letting us know how to be a god. What makes you a god? Your ability to speak, your power, your proclivity to speak things into existence. You know that to be true because things do not exist unless you speak them there, right? You imagine it from the void. From the void, the earth was null, void, no form. There's nothing in your imagination. And then you use the word, you speak it. And a product of it being here, you insist that it's good. Because we know from truthful speech, from what we speak, we know this is how you are a god. This is the characteristics of what makes you a god. And you're a god. All of us are gods today, right? And you're still subservient to another god. And I'll explain what that means. But you are a god. You understand, you have the power of speech. So you speak things into existence. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. How could it have gotten there otherwise? How do things get there otherwise? You bring them here. Your consciousness brings them here, right? And God is the spirit of consciousness. God is the spirit of life itself. The thing that we agree, we're all part of one thing. And God isn't it's not some intelligent God that's now, thinking, and he's like a God in the sky and he looks like you and me and he's like gonna just make things. No, he exists in the spirit of consciousness, the same thing that connects all of us together, the thing that exists within your mind. That's the God that's creating everything, right? And so consciousness, what this line is telling us is that consciousness is becoming aware. Thousands and thousands of years ago, consciousness is now becoming aware of itself. And it's starting to put things into categories. Okay, light and dark, day and night, right? You start to think of yourself as a god, as a baby god, baby God. All you have is you see light and you see dark, and you can start to you see day, night, right? As you start to understand yourself and how you exist in the world, right? Consciousness is becoming conscious. That's what's happening here. And it's a poetic telling. It's so beautiful. It's so beautifully told. So we're going to keep going. God saw that the light was good. Okay, let's talk about what that means. And God saw that the light was good. Things don't exist in a realm of good unless they're spoken into existence. When you speak truth, you see that it's good. When you watch a story that is good, it's true. And it can only be true if the speaker, the God, was connected to the one, the truth, the consciousness that speaks to us, the consciousness that speaks to artists very clearly. Just something told them, like they didn't know that they were going to create what they were going to create. They saw it. They saw it. You see it. And then you speak it, and then it's here. Y'all, I'm going too hard into this shit, man. I'm going too hard into this shit. And God separated the light from the darkness, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening and there was morning the first day. And God said, let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. And God made the expanse and separated the water that were under the expanse from the waters that were above the expanse. And it was so. And God called the expanse heaven, and there was evening and there was morning the second day. Okay. So now we have we're starting to God's basically creating the sky. So if you're thinking about it as an ancient human being, right, and you're poetically talking about this, they're not primitive, right? That's another thing to remember. Like, you want to be really careful about thinking of these people as primitive, because the way what they understood is so unfathomable. How a monkey, right? How our caveman ancestors could have come up with such a profound and true understanding of everything. We don't want to think of them as primitive. I think that does you a disservice, because you're trying to really understand the story, right? You can't understand the story if you're thinking of it as nonsense. It's not nonsense. This is real. This makes sense. This makes sense of everything. In fact, it's the greatest story ever told. And guess what? How I told you that everything is there's a duality for everything. There's a duality of nature, right? There's a beginning, there's the end, there's light, there's dark, there's true, there's false. You have a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere, right? And your left hemisphere is roughly speaking to deal with the order of life, and your right hemisphere deals with the chaos of life. Your right hemisphere is made to deal with the things that you don't know, right? It pulls things from this other world, and we call that world your imagination. And so pulling those things from that imaginary world, you articulate them into truthful speech, and your left hemisphere routinizes it into one. So there's a duality of everything, right? So much so that we decided to put a duality into this book, into this same book. Well, we got an Old Testament and a New Testament. And I think that when I understood what that was about, it really blew me away, honestly. Because you have to see the Bible as truly the story from the beginning to the end of life, right? Genesis to the end, to Genesis to Revelation, like that is an entire story, and God is growing and developing into what he is today, right? And and that God is the ultimate consciousness. And the other thing too that I want to say is that if you want to understand the story, you have to cast yourself in the story. You have to cast the story, because you can't understand the story until it's cast. You can't understand how the story is impacting your life until you cast the story in your life. So, and I say that to say you cast yourself as, you know, as the characters that you're reading about, and you want to play. If you're trying to learn something, if you play, you play the game like you're one of the characters in the story, and you will end up exactly how the character ends up in the story if you choose the same path. Yeah. And so the best way to fully understand the story is to imagine yourself as every single character in the story. And then you can see yourself as the God above it, because you're not, and God is a character too. So you can play God and see how it works. And it works out the same exact way, right? Because these stories are not just made up, right? These stories are an understanding of the archetypal stories of all life, of all living and all being. So so cast yourself as these characters, right? And so in this, we're playing, we are playing the role of God, because God is the only character in the creation story. So we have to understand ourselves as baby consciousness, right? Categorizing everything. And then you got to communicate that to your people, right? You're conscious, right? And you're speaking to the Almighty when you're conscious. You're connected, but you're amongst all these other monkeys and apes and creatures who aren't connected to their conscience, right? So you are God. So now, being God, you got to connect to this conscious, and then you got to articulate that to the rest of the world. So we're saying there's darkness and there's light, there's day, there's night. These are all stories that we're formulating. And I really want you to understand that, man, because apes don't tell stories, yo. Like, the fact that we even got to this first sentence, yo, it should be blowing your mind. That humans, like, we came up with this, man. Apes, monkeys, chimpanzees, our closest relatives, chimpanzees, they don't tell stories. Do you understand that? They do not tell stories, yo. So the fact that we could do this shit, it should be, look, that in itself is a miracle. And the fact that I just explained how this already talks about the Big Bang in the first sentence, that should be blowing your mind, because I think all religions are true. We're all trying to tell the story of life, tell the story of human existence from the beginning to the end. We're trying to articulate it, but we're using what we understand. We're using what we know. When we tell stories about the future, we're not getting it perfectly right, but it's something like that. It's gonna look something like that in the future. There'll be flying cars and spaceships, like, you know, something like that. We're trying our best to tell a truthful, honest story. We're not lying, right? These stories weren't made to control the masses. No, these stories were made so that we could understand life. We could understand ourselves. And the artists are at the forefront, because the artists are the greatest storytellers. They are listening to their conscience. They're trying to make sense of the world. They're trying to use their chaos in their life, right? You use the bad stuff in your life that's happened. They're using all of that chaos, just like I said, from your imagination. They're using that to articulate a story that we can all understand and marvel at, that we can go to chapels and look at the art and be like, wow, this is brilliant. That was in your mind, man. This was in our minds? What? Really? This was in our minds, yo? Like, and so you gotta cast yourself as a little God, right? Like a little, just a conscious being that knows about things, right? And is trying to articulate it to a group of people that knows nothing, to a group of people who are not conscious in any way. It's brilliant to me, man. I hope it's blowing y'all minds. And God said, oh yeah, so I was supposed to explain that. So if you go out and you look at the world, right, you're a little God and you're an ape, right? So you're just trying to go out and figure out the world, because you're guided by your conscience to tell this story. And as you start to understand it, you say, because we use stories to teach each other, we're trying to understand the story, and we say, okay, so if I go out, if you look out, it looks like you're on a disc of land, right? Because that's what the world looks like. You go out into a field, and there's disc of land, and there's water at the bottom, right? There's water underneath, and then there's water above, and it's held up by the water above, because water comes down from the sky. Obviously, there's got to be water above the expanse, and so the expanse is the sky, the expanse in the sky, and then you separate the water from the water, so that's water down there. That's the oceans. We're going to call that seas, and we're going to call this the sky, and we're going to call this heaven, right? So when we talk about up there, that's the heavens, and the stars are up there. So we're going to, and that's where the gods are. The gods exist in the heavens, in the starry night, and that's how we orient ourselves. That's why they're gods, because the gods know where directions are, but we don't know. We're just little apes crawling around, right? We're little chimpanzees not knowing what's up and what's down, but the gods know. Yeah. So that's what this is explaining. The heavens are God's calling the heavens up there, yeah, he called the expanse the heavens, and the evening and the morning was the second day. So another thing I want to point out is that God is not doing all of this in one fell swoop. This is all time, right? Because this is just to show that even gods take time, right? You got to take your time as a God. You got to take your time. We don't do it all in one thing. We break it up into little bits. Yeah. And we're working step by step, and we're piecing it all together. Not just one fell swoop. People don't just do that, right? Like there's a select few people that are capable of doing that, and they don't do that all the time, because they would be worn out. All right. And God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together in one place, and let dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the waters were gathered together, and he called the seas. And God saw that it was good. So you consistently have this insistence that what is made, what God makes is good. It's inherently good. Now, that's speaking to the benevolence of nature and the benevolence of existence itself, because we know that existence isn't all good, right? There's tragedy that besets us on all sides, right? There's endless tragedies on every aspect. But does that mean that that existence shouldn't exist? Right? Are we to say that? Can we say that? Or is it better to have something than nothing? Right? So what we have created, what being here and our experience of being is good, is inherently good. And God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seeds, and fruits, and trees bearing fruit, in which is their seed according to its kind, and on the earth. And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetations, plant yielding seeds according to their own kinds, and trees bearing fruits, in which is their seed, each according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the third day. Right? We didn't know this. We didn't know this when we, you know, like as humans, this is new information. We're learning this. You can't take information like this for granted, right? The fact that we know that certain seeds are for certain things and certain fruits are for certain, and we can plant and create and make vegetation and till the earth. We didn't know that that was the case, right? But we were understanding that they existed. We started to understand stuff, and so we're telling this story. You really think of it as you're telling the first story. Telling the first story. How amazing is that? And God said, let the lights be in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons and for days and years, and let them be lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. And God set them in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth, to rule over the day, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening and there was morning, the fourth day. And God said, let the waters swarm with swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above and earth and, across the expanse of the heavens. So God created the creature. God created the great sea creatures and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarm according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good, and God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth. And there was evening and there was morning, the fifth day. Step by step. And we know it didn't all just happen. It didn't all just come here, right? Like it took a long time. Now, are they days? Are they actual human days? No, first of all, when these stories were being told and articulated, we didn't understand how much time made up how much time and how much, like that wasn't the important part. We're trying to tell stories that can teach people something, right? Stories that people would gather around the fires and listen to and start to understand about life. Right? And we're putting all of this together. When we were telling these stories, obviously the Bible wasn't written in its entirety, but this is what made sense. In the Mesopotamian myths, you have Tehom, which is or Tiamat, which is taken from the root word Tehom, and Tehom is the original chaos that God uses to create everything. And in the Mesopotamian myths, Tiamat is the sea god, right? And I told you earlier that the waters, right? God can't exist without waters. So the Mesopotamians, which is the oldest ancient religion that we know of, that we have an understanding of, they understood that there was chaos, that the world was created from this same void, the same chaos that's described here, but in a different poetic way, right? So it's all we're trying to understand each part of life, and we're categorizing it into pieces. And God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kinds, livestock and creeping things, and beasts of the earth according to their kinds. And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth according to their kinds, and the livestock according to their kinds, and everything that creeps on the ground according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. So still, the proliferation of life is good, right? The fact that things are living and breathing here, life is evolving over 3.5 billion years, and it's good. It seems good. This is great. What's happening, right? The life is existing, and existing is better than non-existence. And we tend to frown upon people who think the opposite, who thinks that existence is better to never have been. Then God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. And so God made man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Right? So what the hell does that mean? We're created in the image of God. This, I think, has been misinterpreted to understand God as this human looking thing that exists in the sky, in the clouds. And he has a big white beard, and that's all due to more poetic interpretations, right? Our drawings of God. The image of God is the image of life itself. So life, if you understand or believe in evolution, which you should, it doesn't matter if you believe in it or not. Evolution has created, after all, evolution works based off of natural selection, right? And nature is the God that selects. You don't select, God selects. God chooses, right? Because God gives life, right? So life, if you have life, it's because you were given the ability to live, right? So you have that ability to now exist and to be. Nature has chosen you to exist in the future. You are chosen. Natural selection chooses you. So the reason why you look the way you look is because of 3.5 billion years of successful selection by nature. Nature first created dinosaurs, and then nature wiped out dinosaurs. Dinosaurs could have very well become conscious. Dinosaurs could have lived long enough to be intelligent, to start to create and build technology, but that was not the image that nature wanted to be God. And now, how can you say what nature wanted? Well, it's what nature selected. And humans won the battle of natural selection. We are who God picked. Nature chose us. So humans are God's chosen people in the image that God wanted. So the nature that you have, what makes you a being, is the image of what we call a man. And so we are made just like God, and we have the ability to speak truth, to mediate between chaos and order by extracting from our imagination great works of art that we speak into existence. And now we have technology, and we have art, and we have all sorts of things that have helped us throughout society, throughout history. Because we are able to create just as the spirit of life that exists within everything is able to create. But we are, not only are we ourselves, right? Not only are we existing, are we life itself with the existence of being. Not only that, but we are also connected mentally, spiritually, to the thing that created everything. So we are the embodiment. We're the limited being that is here, right? We're on earth. We're mortal, but mentally connected in such a way that we can speak as God. We can speak things into existence in the same image that God is able to speak things into existence. That's what it means to be made in the image of God. You are the image that was meant to exist. You come from 3.5 billion years of successful ancestors. Remember that. The thing that makes life exist, all those billions of years ago, you're connected to that. And it's because all of your relatives did something right to keep on existing, despite the tragedy of life that I mentioned. Somehow, you figured it the fuck out. You figured out how to make life work, yo. You figured out life. Because you're here. You're chosen by life. Your ancestors are all successful. And if you're Black, you're even more successful, because guess what? You had to deal with 300 years of slavery. But if you look at the 3.5 billion years, slavery ain't got nothing on you. The fact that you got an iPhone, the fact that you're connected right now, that you're on the phone right now, that you can chill long enough to watch this fucking video. You're chosen, brothers and sisters. You are chosen. Because you're here right now. You're made in the image of God. You have the ability to speak things into existence. You are a God. But you're still subservient. To who? To God himself. And who is God himself? We talked about that voice that's in your head. The voice that guides you and tells you when things are good and tells you when things are wrong and tells you when things are bad. That voice is you trying to manifest itself. Your future you trying to manifest itself in the present. So who you exist as, who you will exist as, who you want to exist as, is calling you to exist in a very particular way. Because if you have a point B, once you have a destination, someplace that you want to go, the only way to get there, or the quickest way to get there, is the straight and narrow. That line that we talked about, the story that you exist in. And the point B That's God. So I want you to look at this. Take a look at this. And this is how it's going to start to make sense. So if you can see the point A, that point A, that's you, right? That point B right there, that's God. This is your journey, right? That's your whole journey right there. This is your story, and you're going towards God. Yeah. As you live your life, you're moving towards the spirit of God. That's your future. That's everything that you want to be, right? That's that. And then all of these blue dots, this is everyone else's journey. And they're all going towards God too. Yeah. Now, to sin means to miss the mark. Right? Sin is a term taken from archery, hamartia. And hamartia means to miss the mark. So you're shooting, imagine that you're on that path, and then you miss the mark, right? You miss it. You start shooting everywhere else because you're not focused on the mission, right? You start doing all of this other shit that's not going to help you. It's not in service of the mission. So anytime if you have a vision and you keep doing things that are going to take you off of the mission, that's sinning. And you decide, your consciousness, God, the thing that's pulling you, your future is going to tell you when you're fucking up. And you're not going to come back from it. You're never going to come back from it if you lie about it, if you don't own up to it, if you don't ask for forgiveness, if you don't repent. And so you can do that however you want. You can go to the monastery. You can do that on the edge of your bed. You can go into the bathroom. You can call the person that you said fuck you to. There's so many ways that you can repent. But you got to do it. You got to look at yourself and say, what did I do to fuck up, man? What did I do to increase the likelihood that I would find myself in this situation? Anytime you're exiled from paradise, anytime you're in chaos, you're thrown back into chaos, you got to ask yourself, what did I do? What did I do? Being connected to God, knowing that I'm a part of this whole thing, me connected, what did I do to increase the likelihood that I would end up in this situation, right? And God only teaches you when you need to be taught, right? Like life only really gives you a lesson if there's something that you need to learn. And that's how you learn, by sitting and honestly asking yourself, okay, I'm finding myself yet again in a dysfunctional relationship. I'm finding myself yet again in a situation where I cannot trust my partner. What did I do? How did I sin? How did I make it more likely that these circumstances would show themselves? I'll close out with this. And God blessed them. And God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over every living thing that moves on the earth. And God said, behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of, wow, really burpy. And God said, behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. That's another thing. God don't say nothing about meat here, because we understood this. We understood we're herbivores, we're plant eaters first. There may be some meat that we can tolerate. There may be some things that we can tolerate if we really need it. Yeah. But that's not the primary source of food. And we're telling this story. You understand? We're humans are telling this story, oral traditions. We're passing this on. And they say, this is saying, every plant yielding seed that is on the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and every bird of the heavens, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, and every I have given every green plant for food. So all the things that have the breath of life, everything is eating plants. Right? That's where it starts. That's where it starts. That's the basis, the fundamental foundation of nourishment. We already understood to be true was the plants. So back to talking about sin, right? Like, look, I'm not gonna tell you how to live your life. Like, and if you're eating whatever the hell you want to eat, and you don't see it as sin, that's totally fine. But when you end up sick, when you end up at the hospital, when you end up with cancer, when you end up with ailments that you can't understand, that you can't describe, I just want you to ask yourself, what did I do to increase the likelihood that I would end up in this situation? And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day, God finished his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it God rested from all his work that he had done in creation. That was it. Why is God resting? Why does a God rest? Gods don't need to rest. Or do they? Clearly, God can do whatever he wants, right? So God is God. God is the conscience, right? And conscience decided to take a break. We sleep now. We gave these new humans have dominion over the earth. Yeah. These things that are just like God itself, right? They won. Nature selected that to be God, to be conscious. And also, it's funny here because a lot of people say that Adam and Eve are the first man and woman. It don't say that here. It says God creates them. He creates a bunch of people. So it still seems in alignment with evolution to me, because God's just creating a bunch of people. So we'll talk about what makes Adam and Eve different. We'll talk about that next week. But I think as we start to really dissect this understanding of religion, we got to understand that we exist in a story. That's the first thing you have to know. And that's what makes life plural. That's what gives the duality of nature, because existing in the story means that there's a present and there's a future, right? We know that there's a past, but the past isn't so much something to focus on or to think about. The past is used as a tool, right? Everything that you have learned about life is in the past. That's all your knowledge. That's your tool belt. And if you're stuck somewhere in the past, it's because you haven't articulated that truth yet. So you'll find therapy very, very, very cathartic. If you allow yourself to either talk to a therapist, or I would definitely advise you to talk to the person whom which you need to share the truth. And if you find yourself suffering, it's because there's a truth that you want to skip over, that you keep trying to skip over. You haven't learned what you needed to learn yet from that thing, and you gotta release it. That's the only way you're gonna survive that. So you don't want to be looking at the past. You want to recognize that you're telling a story, and you want to have main character energy when you're telling your story, right? Main character energy gets to heaven, right? The main character gonna get to heaven according to your storytelling, and you get to tell your story. You get to be the author of your story, right? But you got to be oriented towards a future that has longevity. So that means you want to be thinking about the future. You want to be connected to your future. It means you want to be conscious. You want to be thinking, because your conscience is your future self trying to manifest itself in the present moment. So your future is God itself, is the embodiment of God. It's the image of God that you see tomorrow. That's the image of you, and you're moving towards it. Yeah, every day. And it judges you with every moment. Yeah. Anytime you come in connection with it, it's gonna judge you, yo. Like it's gonna judge you. It's gonna say, are you sufficient? Is this what you want to be? And when you're not everything that you could be. You know that when you're not doing everything that you could, you're not doing your best. You know that to be true. You know it because you're connected to that future self, your future tomorrow. And the longer you think about your future, the more subservient you are, right? And it looks so much better than you. It's so much brighter. Wow. Oh my God, man. Future me is so perfect and so in shape and so just perfect. Just everything. The future you is the ideal, right? And so when you think about that, that's like God, like looking in the face of God. Like you can't, because it's so perfect. I'm like this dirty, I'm nothing compared to my future self. That's the story you want to live in, man. That you're connected to that. You're connected in such a way that future self will tell you how to bring that future self to be. Because you want to be that, right? You want to be the ideal. You want to be everything you can be in the future. So you exist in the story. And life is a story. So we're going to go through and dissect religion with the greatest story ever told. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. It has been an honor to get to go through this story with you. So I'm gonna end with this little poem right here. Now is your chance for true evolution. So listen to these facts that I'm introducing. If you really want to help with the revolution, reaching for your higher self is the best solution. Because you are who you are. So you're never useless. And you have every right to be here. And you'll never lose it. And the beauty of it is you never have to prove it. So when the haters biting at you, then you leave them toothless with your brute skin, but never using straight and narrow towards the truth. And that's how you win. You always start off looking foolish when you try a new thing. But if you're breathing, then you're never losing. In conclusion, quit the snoozing, speak the truth, and maybe you can start a movement. Because it's been proven as a human, you've been endowed with the power to keep it moving. We all got the power to keep going, ladies and gentlemen. And I am so, so, so excited to be diving in to dissecting religion, man. I'm excited because I haven't fully read every story in this book. So I'm excited to go through it step by step. I feel like I'm going to learn a lot it's going to take me 11 years 11 years. So I'm excited to get started now, man, and see how things go. You know, from week to week, we're just gonna go dissecting it bit by bit and just try to go through each story, and I'll love to talk. You know, I'll stay on for my Instagram folks. I'll stay on for a little bit, and yeah, we can just chat a little bit. You can ask me some questions, and yeah, we're just gonna keep it moving, y'all. So thank you so much for joining me on the very first episode of Dissecting Religion. We will see you guys next time. Peace.